Hi there, this is Ronnie coming at you with another video. I've just watched Pair of Geeks' latest video where Jason gives 5 alternatives to D&D, and he goes into multiple genres. It's a watchable video, go and watch it, it's very enjoyable. And he does come up with some great choices from his collection. That deal with science fiction, horror, pulp action, and so on. So I thought, inspired by that, I would also do a 5. But I'm going to do 5 games, 5 fantasy RPGs that I own that you could play as an alternative to Dungeons and Dragons. Rather than put these in any order, I'm going to do them in alphabetical order, just to keep things interesting. So, first up, there is this. This is Blue Rose. Now, I have 2 versions of this. This is the first edition, which uses the True 20 engine, and this is the second edition, which I managed to get for a nice cheap price, which uses the Adventure Game engine from Green Ronin. And I like this system very much. I like both systems. I like the setting, the world. Essentially, it's an egalitarian society. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't chances for action and adventure. There's plenty of it. But it allows for more character-based interaction and all of that, and it gives it gives a very different setting, a very different taste of things than everyone running around D&D style playing murder hobos, and I like that. It's a great system. It's well worth looking out for. Either system, I would assume that I would kind of say the second system at the moment, the Age edition, simply because it's the one that's going to be currently supported. And it's well worth having a look at. Next on the list will come as no surprise to anyone that it's any excuse to bring this back in. Castle Falkenstein, which is a fantasy steampunk setting, albeit in our world or a slightly alternate version of our Victorian society. It is a fantasy game, straight up fantasy. Dwarves, fairy lords who are pretty, for all intents and purposes, Falkenstein's version of elves. There's magic, there's mystery, dragons, magical weapons. It's chock-a-block full of all the tropes of fantasy, but with such a beautiful setting and a lovely, elegant rules system. It is just I said I wouldn't do this in a top 5. It is my favourite system, but anyone who watches my videos knows that anyway. So, next up, going back to the Age system, is Dragon Age. Now, I talked about this. This is the complete core rulebook. It originally came out in 3 box sets. It has now been replaced by this, which is the core book, which deals with everything. This is all the 3 box sets put into one book. This is the only book you need, folks. You really only need this one. Player information, GM information, monsters, everything, all in this book, which, may I add, is the same for the Age version of Blue Rose. Everything is in here. One book to rule them all. Wonderfully simple system. Lots of background on the world. If you're someone who plays the video games that it's based on, you're going to have a bit of a leg up over me. But it's a great setting, wonderful system, great for beginners as well, which I think is something that I would really suggest. Fourth on my list, it's an oldie, but it's still a goodie. Pendragon. If your players are really, they want to play heroic knights and have that real sort of passion and dealing with those conflicts on a sort of grander scale, Pendragon's the game to go for. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful system. Beautifully put together. I mean, I have the 4th edition, but any edition really that you know currently going on is well worth the assault. The 5th one is this little beauty, Shaintar. Now, Shaintar runs off the Savage Worlds rules. I will show you a picky of Savage Worlds. And whilst you don't actually need the Savage Worlds companion, it's always nice to have the fantasy companion. Shaintar is super, just get in there, epic, high fantasy. I'm currently running a game of this, and I have players who play D&D 5th, and they are loving this. They're loving the system. I've said in videos before, the more I'm using Savage Worlds, the more I'm enjoying it. Shaintar just bolts together beautifully. The world is rich and detailed, and it's just an extraordinarily well made game, and I would recommend it highly to anyone. So those are my 5. I am going to put in 2 honourable mentions. Yes, I'm cheating. Sue me. The first one is Fortune's Fool. Our world, Renaissance Europe, elves, dwarves, lots of magic going on. Uses a tarot deck for all your mechanics. Lovely evocative world. The only reason it didn't make my top 5 is that I think it's a little outside the norm, which again one could say is the same for Castle Falkenstein, and to be honest, if I had to pick between the two, Falkenstein is always going to win. So there's that one. And last but not least, if people are determined to sort of go old school, really want a sort of old school number crunching, really heavy, crunchy, old style fantasy game, Palladium. Very much, I mean, you can see so many comparisons between this and sort of AD&D 1st and 2nd edition. But it generates that sort of feeling, sort of old school fantasy gaming very well. And yes, by today's standards, this system is rather clunky, but I've still got it. Firstly, because this was a gift from a friend, from Stephen, and because of that, I will not get rid of it. And it was very nicely given to me, and it's very much appreciated. And also the fact that I can easily sort of divorce the system and use a generic. I would then, going back to Savage Worlds or True 20, Jason in his video mentioned Fate. There's always GURPS as well. There's a myriad of generic systems that you could divorce the system out and just use the setting and put in your system in instead, and it's not impossible to do. So those are my thoughts on alternatives to D&D 5th. In case your D&D players want to play, determined to play a fantasy game, but want to play something a little different from your standard fantasy tropes. I agree with Jason. You can always try them with a different genre altogether. There's certainly some very good sci-fi games out there. There's some very good horror games, some modern action, superheroes. There's a lot of good genres out there. And if your players want to get into those genres, there's a lot of great examples. Some of them Jason touched on in his video. But for me, I thought I would just do something as a straight alternative. If they're determined to play high fantasy Dungeons and Dragons game, let's play one of those instead. I think these games, I'm currently in a D&D 5th game, and I am enjoying it. The system is okay. I'm not dismissive of it. I'm not sitting there going, oh God, this bloody system's awful. I'm not doing that. It's a perfectly serviceable system. Works fine. But I think I'm enjoying it more because of the interplay between the characters, because of the players. More than the system. The system doesn't excite. The scenario excites. The scenario is great. The players that I'm playing with, great fun. We have a lot of laughs. But the system is alright, but nothing more than that. So if your players want to try D&D or something like D&D, try one of these. Some of these systems are a bit more involved than D&D. Some of them are pretty comparable. Some of them are far easier than D&D in terms of mechanics and rules. But they are all good, solid fantasy systems and settings that I think, if you are a D&D player looking for something different, you should check them out. So those are my thoughts. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll be back soon with another video. Thank you very much.